Hello everybody, it's Brian here, nutritionist and coach with Triage Method. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to increase your fruit and vegetable intake. So almost everybody knows that eating more fruits and vegetables and eating enough fruits and vegetables is an important part of a healthy diet and a healthy lifestyle. So eating more fruits and vegetables reduces the risk of non-communicable diseases, certain cancers, diabetes, heart disease, etc. Plus, they can help combat obesity since they are very filling and very nutritious and improve overall diet quality, providing lots of micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals. But the reality is that people are just really bad at eating enough fruits and vegetables. Across the EU, only 10% of people actually eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day or more. 400 grams equates to about 5 servings, and we could argue that you should be trying to push that up to 600, 700 grams even for maximal health benefits. Now in Ireland, we actually have one of the highest intakes of fruits and vegetables in the European Union, but that still means only 30% of people are actually eating 5 servings of fruit and veg per day. So that leaves 2/3 of the population who are not. So I want to look at some ways that you can implement to increase your fruit and vegetable intake and take advantage of the benefits that it brings. So the first thing we can look at, making smoothies, right? Put some spinach leaves in there, put some kale in there, put some frozen fruit in there to make the drink cold. You can put some protein powder in there. You can put a lot of stuff into a smoothie, okay? But we're talking about fruits and vegetables here, so get some spinach in, get some kale in. Those are both good options. They're both fairly neutral tasting. And then add whatever kind of fruits that you might like as well. And of course, as I said, if you want to make more of a meal out of it, then you can add some sort of protein source. You could add more carbohydrates. You could add some fats. But, let's focus on the fruits and vegetables, right? So that's a really easy way to get more. You could eat, if you had a smoothie to say your breakfast, for example, or have a smoothie for breakfast potentially, that could be another 2 or 3 servings right then and there. The next thing you can do, you can make soup, buy soup, add soup to your meals in some shape or form. So you can add soups as a starter to say lunches or dinners, and it's actually shown that this so-called preloading of soup to a meal actually reduces energy intake at the meal. So if you eat soup before a meal, it looks like you actually reduce your overall energy intake at the lunch or the dinner that you then have. And again, if you want to make more of a meal of it, you could add pulses like chickpeas, beans, lentils, which also count as servings of vegetables to the soup. Or you can add a protein source like pre-cooked chicken, ham, and therefore you make sort of a meal of it. Next one, use things like pulses that I just mentioned. Chickpeas, lentils, beans, add them to meals where you can. Have baked beans on toast as a meal. Throw beans into a chili or into pasta dishes, put lentils into curries, put chickpeas into curries. There's quite a lot of versatility with these sorts of foods, and adding them to dishes to really bulk up the plant content, the fiber content. You'll get some good quality carbohydrates in there. You'll get some good quality protein in there. You can also add things like beans, peas, lentils, chickpeas to rice if you're having rice with a dish, and that then increases the fiber, increases the plant load in that meal. And speaking of rice, you can use vegetable rices like cauliflower rice, for example, at meals. You could do 50-50 regular rice and cauliflower rice. You could do all cauliflower rice, and that will give you an extra few servings of vegetables. And speaking of which, the ease of preparation for, say, vegetables especially can be a barrier. So let's actually talk about that. So I want you to understand that you can actually prepare certain vegetables very, very quickly in something like the microwave, right? If you get, say, chopped up broccoli, put it in a bowl, cover it with a little bit of water, and then cover it with a lid. If you microwave that for 2 or 3 minutes, that's going to be ready to eat. All you have to do is drain it and serve, and maybe season it in some way to make it more tasty. Similarly, if you pour a kettle of boiling water over something like spinach leaves, it'll actually wilt them down pretty instantaneously, and then they're just ready to eat. Again, just drain them off, pat them off, and they are ready to go, okay? You don't even have to cook them as such. And this brings me to one of the most important points, is actually making the vegetables taste nicer, right? Because this is a complaint that people will often make is, they don't like the taste of vegetables. It makes it harder for them to eat more vegetables. So we want to reduce friction here. We want to get people eating more vegetables, of course. So let's consider how we can make them more palatable, more appetizing, because to be fair, I don't think anybody wants to actually sit down and eat way overcooked, overboiled, plain broccoli, plain cauliflower, plain carrots. If you can't look forward to it and you feel like you're just going to choke it down just to get it over with, it's not going to be a very sustainable habit that you're going to stick with long term or enjoy. So you do need to get your flavorings right. So if you're having, some sort of composite dish like a bolognese, like a chili, like a shepherd's pie, like a curry, a stir fry, any of these things, right? They will do a lot of the heavy lifting for you because the vegetables will be caught up in all the flavors of those meals. So all you need to do is think about, okay, how can I actually incorporate more vegetables into this meal? So if you're making something like a curry, you could have, garlic and onions as the base. You can fit a lot of other vegetables into it as the cooking process is ongoing. You can add diced courgettes, diced aubergines, diced peppers, carrots. There's a lot of options here, really, depending on, what you have in stock maybe, or what your preferences are. But the point is, you have to start thinking about, okay, how can I actually incorporate more vegetables into this meal that I'm making? And on this point of trying to make the vegetables taste nicer, if they're bound up within a curry or a bolognese, you're just going to taste the curry or the bolognese. It's going to be fine. And it actually adds nice textures and even additional flavors to the meal by having more vegetables in there. And if you're not building vegetables into a dish of that sort, or even if you are, and you just want to have an extra side of vegetables, which is pretty elite in my opinion, you just have to figure out how you might want to season them to make sure that they're flavored properly and you're going to enjoy eating them, right? So this is not that complicated. A formula for this that I like can be to choose firstly a spice of some sort. So that could be something like cumin, it could be something like chili flakes, chili powder, paprika. Any of those are good options. Then choose an acid of some sort. So that could be lemon juice. That could be some sort of vinegar like balsamic vinegar, red wine vinegar. It could be something like fermented or pickled vegetables, which again are more vegetables, so that's an extra bonus. And then fit in a salty umami type flavor in there as well. For example, you could put Parmesan flakes or grated Parmesan onto vegetables. You could cook your vegetables or pair your vegetables with like a little bit of chorizo or a little bit of pancetta. Something like feta cheese, seaweed, olives, they're all good options. And even just a little bit of salt seasoning, right? If you're eating a minimally processed diet and you're putting a lot of emphasis on whole foods, you may not have to be too concerned about adding a little bit of salt to meals, especially if it helps you to consume more and more vegetables. You can also add a fat source of some sort to the spice and the acid and the salty flavor that I already mentioned. Some of those that I mentioned will actually combine both. So say for olives, for example, or any types of cheese or the chorizo or the pancetta, any of those will have a reasonable amount of fat in them as well. You can also think about things like olive oil, toasted nuts, and with any of these added fats or added umami flavors, a little bit does go a long way. So you don't need to be overly concerned about adding these to your meal. In most cases, you will be able to fit them in, and it will definitely help you on your quest for better health, better body composition, better performance by eating more and more vegetables. You could also potentially incorporate some sweet flavors in here as well. For example, you can roast carrots with a little bit of honey or maple syrup. You can do Brussels sprouts with a little bit of maple syrup. That's one that I like to do. And a little bit, like I said, does go a long way. So in my book, it is a good option. We can also think about how exactly we cook the vegetables. Personally, I think roasting is the best way to cook them in terms of the flavor enhancement that you get with the vegetables. That can take a little bit of preparation, but you can do big batches of roast vegetables as part of your meal prep if you're organized, and then you just have them ready for several days or even most of a week. Just add it to your meals as needed. I mentioned a bit earlier about sneaking vegetables into dishes like curries, stir fries, bolognese, pasta dishes, etc. Omelets is also another good option for breakfast or a lunch potentially. So if you're making an omelet, don't just make it with, eggs and ham or whatever else. Get some mushrooms in there, maybe get some onions in there, maybe get some peppers in there. All adds flavor, all adds texture, and makes it a more enjoyable and more nutritious meal. So like I said earlier, you always have to be thinking about, okay, I'm putting a meal together here. How do I actually incorporate some vegetables? How might I incorporate some vegetables? You can experiment with this stuff, see what works, see what doesn't, but just get into that frame of mind so you're not serving up meals that are just, basically meat and carbohydrates and nothing else. If you're someone that likes toast, right, you could have something like avocado on toast, you could have something like banana on toast, which is going to be a bit more plants, a bit more nutrition than maybe something like butter and jam on toast, okay? So that's a good snack idea. You could also potentially put some nut butter on there with some banana. tastes good, eating more fruit that way, and potentially eating less of other things that maybe aren't as nutritious. I really encourage most of my clients to have a really nice serving of fruit at breakfast, because most people are not going to be having a lot of vegetables at breakfast. Usually the types of foods that people eat at breakfast aren't going to be that accommodating for eating a lot of vegetables, right? If people are having porridge, for example, you're not actually no, I will correct myself. You could potentially grate some carrot in there. You could grate some courgette in there. That is not unheard of. But for the most part, I think we can focus on fruit at that meal, depending on what someone is having. So think about adding, say, lots of berries to that meal, or any fruit really. It's really hard to go wrong. There are a lot of implicit health benefits with things like berries. They're lower calorie, they're high nutrient density. You can eat quite a lot of them for not a lot of calories, and they are very tasty. But what I want you to think about here is not just doing that, little sprinkle, the berry, stop treating berries like they're salt, this kind of conservative sprinkle on top of your cereal or on top of your oats. Let's get a big bowl of those to go with that bowl of porridge. And that way you're just eating like 3 servings of fruit potentially at that one meal. Of course, there's no issue with eating lots of fruit. People who eat lots of fruit tend to be healthier, live longer. So it's not something to be afraid of. I know that is somewhat prevalent in certain parts of the nutrition community, but basically we've never seen anybody have problems because they ate too much fruit. If you're someone who has yogurt for breakfast, again, you can pair that with a decent serving of fruit, no problem. I mentioned smoothies at the start of this video, and they're obviously another great way to incorporate some fruits and vegetables, usually at breakfast. And even if you're in a hurry, you just grab a protein shake, grab a couple of pieces of fruit, and you're out the door, and you have a nicely balanced meal, right? Which will stop you, grabbing something suboptimal on the way, like a breakfast roll or something like that, or, just eating like a breakfast bar or something that's not really going to provide a lot of nutrition for you. And if you're someone that likes to eat sandwiches or wraps for your lunch, try and fit some vegetables in there, try to get some lettuce or tomato in there. You're not going to fit a huge amount in, maybe in a wrap because it's slightly bigger than a sandwich. You're not going to fit a huge amount in. So in that case, think about bringing some fruit into that meal. If you're having a wrap, we'll have an apple or a pear as well, for example. And like I said earlier, you could definitely incorporate some soup in with that meal too. And if you follow any of these tips, or certainly all of these tips, you will massively increase your fruit and vegetable intake across the day, across the week, and you will reap all the health benefits from it. So that is all for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful, and be sure to follow for more health, nutrition, and fitness content.